Well, good afternoon, Unity. It's Friday, so this is a little strange for us. It's kind of throwing us off, but I will introduce the podcast. This is the Cobb and Unity podcast today. I'm going to let Unity talk about our guest, but we've done a little jimmy rigging here thanks to Liam Couture and the Village Bloomery. Both Unity and I, we're not great with tech today. Some cables forgotten, some speakers and monitors, this, that, and the other thing. So Liam, first and foremost, thank you very much, and you are listening and now watching the Cobb and Unity podcast. Unity?
Hi. So we are Cobb and Unity. We are the he said and she said of the BC and Canadian cannabis communities. And this is our 7th episode, and we're really excited to be having guests. And today we are recording at the Village Bloomery headquarters. The Village Bloomery is currently a dispensary located near Granville Island in Vancouver. They carry an amazing selection of silver market products, so topicals and craft cannabis. If you're interested, get down there soon, because soon they're transitioning into a cannabis retail store. So get down there, stock up on your silver, and be ready, because it's going to be a long time before this stuff is available again.
That silver is gold. That silver is gold.
Should we start calling it the gold market?
We might have to.
Let's just start a new one.
And who do we have with us today, Unity?
We do have Liam Couture here, so be sure to follow him. He is the man behind the camera. And we also have Jill Pollard. Jill Pollard.
Whatever.
We have Jill Pollard, and she is over from Vancouver Island. So she traveled over today on a ferry. For those of you who are not from BC, it's typically a 1.5-hour ferry ride plus driving on either side. So a 3-hour trip.
That's
3.5 hour. The 3-hour tour is not a
It was like choppy water today, so I feel like it was a little slower.
You're floating on a Slurpee.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to steal that. That was so good.
That's why we love Cobb. That's why we keep him.
One-liners.
Me and my nuggets.
So Jill Pollard is a legalization and safe access advocate. She's the chief creative officer, founder, and publisher at The Herb Life, a leading cannabis lifestyle website and print publication serving the feminine cannabis experience through industry interviews, education, and media. She's also a regular contributor to the Growth Up and teaches the Marketing Under the Cannabis Act course at Mount Royal University. And she's a co-host of Hi Friends podcast with Rachel Kolek, a West Coast, East Coast point of view for women who love cannabis. In 2018, she was nominated for a Canadian Cannabis Award in the Influencer category and was awarded the first ever Cannabis Leader of the Year trophy from Notable Life. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at Jill, and that's spelled with a G-I-L-L _ Pollard, P-O-L-A-R-D on Instagram and Twitter. Welcome, Jill.
Welcome, Jill.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
So how was the ferry ride over?
Choppy. And full of teenagers going to Snoop Dogg concert. So it was kind of a party at 10 a.m.
Go ahead.
You're going to Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, I totally.
You are going to Snoop Dogg. I was going to say, is anybody here going to Snoop Dogg? I've asked around at a few places, and apparently I don't influence that much, really. So
So I heard a rumor
that?
that you are going to Snoop Dogg and you're in a room.
Oh, I am.
Yeah?
I'm in they put us in a box somewhere. So I hope it's
A
good.
box close to the stage is the rumor I heard.
Yes.
it's better than so not a skybox.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's the good one. Yeah, the
Okay.
skyboxes give me vertigo, and I feel like I'm about to fall onto the nosebleeders, and yeah, it's dangerous for somebody like me.
That's what I would have assumed that I was in. So what I hear is that it's next to the stage, so it's like a side view.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
This is a special box then.
maybe
It's like a
I could
custom
totally be making this up,
No,
but that's
heard
what I
this rumor.
think.
I
Yeah,
heard this rumor, and someone told me you were in that.
yeah.
And I was like, I want to go to Snoop Dogg and be
you
in
should
that
come.
box.
Just come. We'll see what happens.
I don't think it's that easy.
I heard there's food, so I'm really excited.
And a green carpet.
And a green okay, yeah. So I should brush my hair and prepare for that. And
Yeah.
yeah. And there's there's a bunch of really cool opening acts that I'm really excited about. There's like Afro Man is coming and Bone Thugs
and Harmony.
Yes,
Man. I mean, that's some classic tunes from the
Crossroads song. I've been singing it all day.
I say I was old enough at that point to probably see him back in the '90s, but yeah, it's Bone Thugs and Harmony. It's some good stuff.
I'm very excited. Yeah.
So, what ferry route were you on? This is going to kind of give us an idea,
Yes.
probably, as to whereabouts you're from.
Sure. Okay, so most people take the ferry from Victoria, but I poo-poo that and I go through Nanaimo.
Okay.
Yeah, it's much faster, much easier. Maybe it's not much faster, but it's much easier.
To Horseshoe Bay.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
And then how long is the drive from your house to the ferry?
Like 40 minutes.
And you have chickens, so you're quite like out there.
I'm out there, yeah. So I live in an area called the Cowichan Valley, which is kind of in between Nanaimo and Victoria, so just north of Victoria. And it's I've been told, Kelly Coulter, whom I'm sure most of your listeners have heard of, tells me that it's the only area in Canada that has like a Mediterranean-like climate, which is why so many people grow there.
And you guys have quite a rich history of growing out there. I know that a lot of my cannabis has come from the island. I don't necessarily know exactly where, but how is your community adjusting to legalization, post-prohibition, trying to transition? Give us a little insight into that.
I think I don't want to say that it's a rocky adjustment. I don't think so. I think that for the most part, cannabis cultivation is so deeply entrenched in the community. You know, there are families that have been growing for generations there. And when you drive around towns like Duncan or Lake Cowichan, it's a lot of fun to play like Spot the Grow. You know? So that happens a lot.
Do you play that with your kids?
Yeah, we do actually. Yeah. How many vents do you see? You know?
The new I Spy with my little eyes, something that smells good.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, you know, also in Duncan we have 2 licensed producers, and then Victoria has one, and Nanaimo has one. So, I mean, it's definitely an area that's keen to grow. And I think, for the most part, people who come from the, like, MMPR, MMAR grow are maybe hesitant about the new legalized schemes. There's definitely a lot of sort of like, I don't want to say anti-LP, but maybe suspicion or concern about being left out, or maybe quality.
I think loss of control, too, over the grow itself, and loss of control over the actual quality of the outcome. That if they're not, if they're limited, from what I understand, that I've chatted with some, it has to do with that they're not confident that the facilities they'll be provided with will be able to yield what they normally yield, and the outcomes won't be there. So, and for myself, quality, yeah, absolutely, quality is king, and that's where I will seek it, and that's where I'll always find it, and that's where I'm landing right now, is the silver market.
I mean, I agree with you, and I've always grown my own weed, and so, you know, this move to legalization has affected me in no way whatsoever. Like, there was no difference between October 16th and October 17th for me. They were the same. But I recognize too that I live in a bubble, and I live in this part of the world that is, you know, affords me this privilege of being able to grow my own, and you know, both through this incredible climate and then through a pretty relaxed attitude from, you know, RCMP and municipal officers kind of thing. It's never been a huge deal. So from that perspective, I can see why looking at like big pharma, big weed might seem concerning. You might worry about the quality, because likely whatever's in your backyard is amazing. But then I think about people who live in like Saskatchewan and are maybe suffering from some sort of compromised immune system and don't have access to wonderful flowers in their own backyard. And then I think, well, LPs are great for that, you know? Mm-hmm. So more people can have weed. More weed for everyone. That's what I say.
Well, and I think we need to recognize, too, that the term LP is going to be changing this year with the onboarding of micro-cultivators and their licenses. I mean, I know myself, one of my favorite group of, well, I guess they're a distributor, but they represented a large group of growers, BC Weed Company and Top Leaf. They'll be coming online hopefully in the next 4 to 6 months, and that, I think, is going to be a real game changer. And I'm hoping it's also going to give those micro cultivators that you're talking about a little bit of confidence and a little bit of, hey, you know what, if they did it, let's see what's going on. Is there anything you recommend for micro cultivators or directions to take or how to kind of get their feet wet with the regulated side? You get those questions, and how do you respond to them?
Yeah, from time to time. I mean, the most important thing I would say is if you're hoping for a micro license of any kind, so, you know, cultivation or a dealer or processing, is make sure that you're talking to your municipality. Because really bylaws are the thing that seem to be hanging people up the most. So in Duncan, where I am, there's a lot of concern over land use, right? So is this industrial or is it agricultural? And should we be using farmland for cannabis or should we keep growing hay for horses? Like this is sort of the argument that's happening all the time. And yeah, so it's really important to get out there and go down to town hall meetings. And if you want to grow weed and you want to apply for one of these licenses, then you need to make sure that you'll be able to operate.
Absolutely.
Because they're very expensive otherwise, so yeah.
I spend time in the Kootenays, and it's this very similar feeling up there. And so there's a lot of talk, because I think a lot of the fear is not just the cost, but the process. And a lot of these people who have been cultivating and growing for these decades are accustomed to operating outside the system. So suddenly cooperating with Ottawa is a very daunting task.
Can you imagine how bizarre that would feel? You know, it would be very sort of internally confusing, and
And so there's co-ops starting to happen. Do you know about anything like that happening on the island?
No, but if there's anybody on the island doing that, they should reach out and say hi to me. No, I don't know anything about that. But I could see that, right? I mean, it's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of hoops to jump through, it's a lot of approvals to get. And just thinking about it feels overwhelming and exhausting. I can imagine why people would think it's just too much. You know?
And building a business, building a brand, having
really
a story,
hard.
like everything. Suddenly you just go from growing to having to run this entire business. So
when I first started working in the legal space at an LP, I remember it was like a fairly bootstrap situation. And I remember just being like, do we have a budget for marketing? And the response was, no, we don't need one. You know, and it's like, it's changed so much. We need one, yes.
because you teach marketing under the Cannabis Act. So what is your view on the marketing regulations and what's happening right now?
Well, they are restrictive, absolutely. But I think it's all in your outlook and how you choose to look at it. So you can look at these restrictions and say, oh my God, I can't do anything, forget it. Or you can look at them and say, okay, well, here's a very clear roadmap that explains exactly what I can do. So as long as I'm operating within this box, I'm okay. And so I think if you look at it that way, you'll find that there's actually a lot you can do. You know, we're probably not going to see like Aurora putting their name on Rogers Arena anytime soon. That's not going to happen. But there's still, you know, we can still do educational events. We can do panels. You can do even really standard traditional click-through ads, that kind of thing. That's fine. You can do it. Just don't put Tommy Chong in them, you know?
Can we pay Tommy Chong to teach us how to roll a joint, or is that considered endorsement?
That's
still?
an endorsement.
Just because he's rich and famous, hey? Just because he's rich and famous and influences millions.
Yeah, and then if you're a celebrity because you're a stoner, does that really mean you're still a celebrity? Like that can't endorse cannabis? Like what if somebody in Canada, like who's really, really well known in cannabis, is there a threshold where suddenly they're considered a celebrity? Like you have...
I've wondered about that because looking at influencers online, you have lots of rec brands working with influencers and sponsoring their posts. But where does that fall? So it's confusing. Yeah, so maybe if you're unsure, that might be something you kind of tiptoe around a little bit, or I don't know. It's the consideration, right? So if you pay somebody either with product or money or swag, you know, that's consideration given, and that's where you are outside of the regulations.
I like hearing what you're saying, but I hate hearing what you're saying because it's I had a lot of big dreams for the content that I wanted to produce, and now it's become a little suffocating, I think, and a lot of folks are paralyzed. Like you said, let's just not do anything because we don't really know either what to do or we're just scared. And we swear on the show, scared shitless because of what kind of trouble we might get in simply from tripping a wire we didn't even know was there. So that's why I really like doing these podcasts at this point, because this is an artistic approach. And despite the fact that Unity might be an influencer, you might be an influencer, I might be an influencer, we're still allowed to, unsponsoredly, if that's a word, which it isn't, basically talk about anything and everything we do want. So, which is nice that we can sit here and have this discussion about the silver market. You also have some incredible edibles on the island, from what I understand. I know that baked edibles, myself, I'm a big fan of those guys, and I think they're based out of Victoria anyways. But from an edible standpoint, we're not going to ask you about regulations and whatnot, but is there, do you consume edibles yourself?
I do. So edibles are kind of hit or miss with me. They're either like the best time ever, or it's just like a candy I ate, whatever. No big deal. But for a long time, edibles were the easiest thing to travel with. So I started eating them again for that. And it was great. You know, it felt healthier than smoking, which was nice. But again, you get that hit or miss sort of thing. So I did find a couple of brands that I like a lot, and I really hope that they're operational going forward.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable letting us know which those brands are?
For sure, yeah. So I'm a big fan of Mary's products, the gummy bears. Really, really like those. Baked is great. And then there is another one. I cannot remember what they're called, but they're a caramel. I don't know. I can't remember the name. I'd have to think about it a little bit. Yeah.
I love the options that we have right now anyways. And it sounds like with our regulations, we're going to have these options, and the silver market is going to shine for the next few years because it looks like we're going to be all eating Soylent Green in order to get high, because simply that's really the only thing that isn't going to entice children. But I've seen what kids eat these days, and they'll eat Soylent Green. So at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to a little bit of the silver market dangling around because that's really going to be our access to some of the fun stuff. With that being said, though, I'm curious how the edibles legislation are coming down. I might ask you a quick question on that. What are your feelings on where we're at with the edibles legislation? And do you feel that with the runway of the past 12, or the 12 months runway leading into legalization for edibles with flower, are they going to be less strict, about the same, or more strict because of the historical land? Now that we have that starting point and that history.
I think that if history is anything to go on, they're going to be more strict. But I think that's okay because it's easier to roll back regulations than enforce new ones. If you look at Washington and what happened there, it was sort of this free-for-all. Yes, make edibles, do whatever you want. And a ton of people invested in equipment and branding and packaging, only to have the government come back and say, actually, we made that a little too crazy and nobody can make these things anymore, you know, and all these people are out all this money, and that's horrible and frustrating. So as frustrating as it is to have all of these rules hanging over you, I like to operate under the assumption that as soon as we can show that the world hasn't ended, things will kind of relax a little bit. I hope.
Absolutely. Well, okay, let me start with that. I mean, yes, there is a recreational side to that. That's typically what I have up until really CBD. Yeah, I started really getting into CBD and the edibles now. I actually do enjoy the products by Sec. They have the high CBD. What was it? Were they pineapples, peaches? I can't even. So strawberries. That's what it was. Yes. So
25 milligrams.
So it's, and that's, and that's a delivery system at the end of the day. I mean, you can look at edibles, in my opinion, you can look at them as, this fun candy, and that's all it is. But it's all, we give, children gummies in order to be able to consume their medicine or their vitamins or whatever. And same in that right, I think that the edibles themselves are still a vehicle for some people to be able to get it in. With that being said, I hail more from a recreational side. Medicinally, do you use edibles medicinally, or is it mainly for recreational purposes?
No, edibles are fun for me. That is all day fun, absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure it doesn't hurt that it helps you sleep. I mean, there's somewhat of a therapeutic value, I'm sure, but it's always been recreational for you.
Yeah, definitely. So I do treat migraines and anxiety and insomnia with cannabis, but I do that with like vaporizing mostly or smoking. And edibles have just always fallen into my recreational sort of toolkit. Although, as I'm saying that, I'm thinking about why I traveled with them so much, and I traveled with them because I really needed to have cannabis with me so I could go to sleep at night. So maybe it was medicinal, therapeutic at least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Unity yourself, how do you work with edibles, and are there any groups that we haven't really identified here that...
I either microdose my edibles, so like a daily vitamin, 2.5 milligrams, maybe a few times a day. I use the ganja-wise pills for that. That's not quite an edible. It's like, I guess it's just ground up cannabis or oil in a pill.
A consumable. I guess everything's a consumable.
It goes in my mouth and I swallow it, so
go.
I don't know I don't know where that goes.
Call it what you will.
And then when I'm sick, like I had an abscessed tooth and I had my wisdom teeth taken out. I use really, really high dosages for that, just to knock out the pain, and then I take less of my prescribed medication during those periods. My new thing I started doing this winter is when I felt a cold coming on, I just knocked myself out. I would take like a really, really high dose for me, so maybe 40, 50 milligrams, and just be forced to meditate or sleep for hours. Because normally when I feel like I'm getting sick, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling sick, and then I end up binge watching Netflix. So when
you're not really like powering through it or like relaxing through it.
No, I'm just like, yay, I'm at home and I'm sick. I'm going to watch TV or read a book. And I just realized that by taking that out of the healing process and just knocking myself out, I don't get sick.
No.
I just don't.
You're so lucky. I have kids, so I feel like I'm always sick.
There's an interesting point then, and I'm sure you probably get this all the time, just to kind of go along the string of edibles as a mother. How do you feel about, maybe not the legislation, but just edibles in general in relation to children at home?
I have opinions. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Okay, so in general, I would love for edibles to be something that everybody can access or manufacture if that's what you want to do. I'm down with it. I love it. I think it's great. My only stipulation, I guess, is that not everybody is super, super responsible all the time. And so I would hope, as a mother who has these two children who will put anything shiny that looks like candy in their mouth, that edibles come in childproof packaging and maybe don't look like the kind of candies my kids are used to. Like, I don't want to have to say, like, this is mommy's candy and this is yours. I don't know what it should look like then. Maybe just like a square and just make it look plain. And then, of course, it's still up to me to lock it away and make sure it's not accessible. But if something were to happen, I just don't want it to look like something my kids would be attracted to.
I come from Alberta, and I tread on these conversations very lightly when I'm home. But my sister has 4 kids at home. I pointed out that there was a Costco-sized Kirkland thing of child vitamins that was sitting in a pull-out drawer that was basically the kids could access. But I asked, why don't they? Why are they not eating handfuls of those vitamin gummy bears? And it's basically, I'm assuming, because the kids have been told under no uncertain circumstances this is medicine. Do you experience the same things at home where there are things that are created for kids to consume things easier, a vehicle, but they know damn well, Mom says do not touch this, and if I do, I'll either get sick or I'll get a little bit of a sore ass or something. I'm sorry, we don't spank anymore. I'm from the 80s, born in the late 70s, but Jesus. But yes, the kids, they don't touch it for a reason, or am I mistaken?
Well, okay, so my kids don't drink household cleaners because we've explained that that's a terrible idea.
They look great, some of them. That green was very fascinating for me as a kid, but we don't do that.
They don't get into the liquor cabinet because we've explained that this is, not going to make you feel great. And they don't go into my cannabis box for the same reason. But everything else that looks appealing to kids in our house is typically for the kids. So we don't, I don't have like a Flintstones vitamins that I'm like, no, you can't have more than one. So that would be completely foreign and confusing for them, I think. Yeah. So, it would be on me as their parent to make sure that they understand. I just would like some of that burden lifted.
Fair enough. I think, yeah, we can all meet in the middle on this one somewhere anyways. So
Did you see that story in the news? It was a few months back, and it was a child on the island was taken to hospital.
Who didn't hear about this story?
Yeah, I know,
Everyone
right?
hung on
I was
to
horrified,
that.
and I was so upset, and I was just like, oh, we can do better. Like this is the kind of stuff media wants to talk about. Don't give them any reasons. So even for that alone, I think a child-proof packaging would have made a big difference there.
In the states, so in the legalized states, all edibles are child-proof, and the dosaging is quite low. It's 10 milligrams, and in Oregon it's 5 milligrams or grams. Oh, now I'm getting confused. That's what happened last week. Milligrams.
Yeah.
And what happens with the edibles, because everything adds up, because they have to go through food safe and all this testing. So edibles are actually quite expensive in the states because of everything that they have to go through. So I found that they almost become a product for like adult consumers or people with real jobs because it's pricey.
It
it's
is
not.
expensive, yeah.
They're not necessarily affordable for just like a recreational, ongoing experience.
Yeah.
And they're definitely not designed for kids. Like they're not gummy bear shapes in Oregon, and I don't think they're like that in Nevada. I think Washington just passed a law last spring. Was it?
I think so. Or no, it's. I think they're still just.
Oh no, it was right before. It was September.
Yeah, and they're going back and forth. Like maybe they won't increase regulations. Maybe they will. I don't know. I'm not caught up now.
That's I think a frustrating. And that's the one thing I think we all should recognize here in Canada, that despite we might be starting off, and you were kind of alluding to this earlier, starting off with what seems to be a stranglehold around our neck. Could you imagine being able to breathe as big and heavy as you want, and then somebody coming in with the stranglehold? At least we're starting from a tight spot and working our way out, and we're not completely out. You know, the universe has expanded, and now we're being asked to contain it back to a singularity. So the fact that the U.S. is kind of going backwards, I think, is probably a bigger frustration than starting from this point. So really, our regulation is somewhat of a blessing right now because, yes, we're looking at it in the gray market, but we don't have established markets right now. And we're establishing a market in a place where hopefully we can expand from. And in the U.S. right now, they're possibly contracting to a point where it's costing people business licenses, it's costing them their livelihoods, things like that. So we are fortunate.
In some cases, people have invested, tens of thousands of dollars or more. You're not going to get that back. If your mold looks like a gummy bear and suddenly you can't make gummy bears anymore, like, I don't know anything about equipment, but that just sounds really frustrating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Unity, how are we doing here?
I think it's wrapping up.
Yeah, I think we should probably we get chatty here, and it looks as though we're probably coming up to the half-hour standpoint. We're trying to keep it between 30 and 40 minutes for our viewers, so we get everybody right to the end. Or viewers, I guess viewers as of today. Our listeners, we're unsure what they are as of right now, but Uni, why don't you start dancing down the hill of wrapping up here?
Well, we were talking about your Hi Friends podcast, and you also have a new podcast as well.
Yeah.
Can you speak to these?
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we've started producing podcasts at Herbalife. So we have 2 now. We have one called The Mental Health Booster with Mika Unterman, who has the most soothing voice I've ever heard in my life. And these are really, really short guided meditations and breathing exercises. So it's like 5 minutes. If you're just having a moment or you're a little tense or whatever, you just need a little break, pop on Mika's voice and calm down. And then our next one has just launched. It's called Sessions. And Sessions is a little bit different. Pretty much the way that it came about is we just want to talk to as many people as we can. So we thought, let's just have rotating hosts. So for every episode, we have a different set of people having a conversation just about cannabis.
That's really cool. That's unique. I like that.
Thanks.
I like that.
I hope it works out. And I hope everybody else likes it too.
Well, Margaret Sung did one.
Margaret Sung, Sarah Hanlon, Dr. Jenna Valeriani, Brenda Risode. We've got lots of great people on there.
Some real heavy hitters. And where do we find all of this? Is there a central point we can do that? Are you scattered all across the board?
Scattered everywhere, but definitely you can find it on, everything's on Apple iTunes, and then there's the website, so theherbLifestyle.com/podcasts.
And print number 3 is coming out soon. Oh, part two. Going ahead of you, sorry. So I've seen the teaser photos. Tell us how it's different from your first magazine and what your plan is with the magazine moving forward.
Okay. So the first one we really wanted to focus on, now we've come to this point of legalization, and there are all these incredible women who have done so much work to bring us to that point. With the second one, we're taking more of a historical approach. So we have Amanda Siebert wrote this incredible piece about the origins of the 420 movement. The Ladies of Paradise from Oregon did this incredible photo shoot that kind of reimagines different points in history and how cannabis might have been used, which is a lot of fun. It was like just the sets alone blew my mind. They were so great.
Tell us what you're laughing.
There's something going on over here. There's lots of looks going around. So we're gonna flesh this one out, Liam and I.
Why you and Andrew are laughing at each other.
Is this where we engage Andrea onto the show? I don't know.
Minds think alike. That's what it is. Great minds think alike. We're actually working on sort of a historical, a historical.
Come on, man.
Andrew's gonna come
Yeah,
to the show.
we're looking at a history of cannabis through fashion and photography and style. So that's really interesting that that's also taking place in Oregon. So yeah, we'll hook you up. That's hilarious. We're like, aw.
We thought we were so original.
It's gonna be original. It's Canadian content.
That's amazing. I love it. That's so great.
I find this a lot in cannabis, this collective consciousness popping. Have you heard the story about the monkeys on the islands in Japan? I think it's in Malcolm Gladwell writes about it in The Tipping Point.
Okay.
So the idea is on one island, the monkeys are taught how to wash their potatoes in the river to get the sand off of it, and they're not taught that on any of the other islands. And what happens is the monkeys on the one island that are taught this, they're doing it, they're all doing it. It's a better consumption experience.
Fair enough.
And then the other monkeys on the other islands also start washing their potatoes in water. So there's this collective consciousness that happens where one group of people start doing something and another group also does it. And there's been science experiments with it happening in different countries on different continents where you'll have two different groups of people that are given the same video and one group is given an insight to it and then the other group can pick it up. So I find that happens in cannabis a lot.
Isn't that interesting?
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Cheeky monkeys.
Well, let's definitely compare notes and I'll show you what I've got.
So very exciting. I'm excited for that second issue.
So we've got collaboration within collaboration. We'll title this show Inception, I think, or Serendipity, or something along those lines. But cannabis, if it's anything, it's serendipitous. So.
And when is that launching? Where can people buy it?
Oh, okay. So we're taking pre-orders now on the website, www.theherblifestyle.com. And it's printing right now. So we'll be shipping probably next week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And so right about now, Cobb and I usually talk about events happening in Vancouver. Anything you want to speak to that's coming up on the island that you want the community to be aware of?
I wish I knew of something. I think probably the past guest that you had, the Sangha Collective, they put together a networking event a couple of weeks ago. So if they're listening to this, I hope they do more of that.
And I hear that you also want to be hands-on with the New Leaf Outreach. Is that correct?
You guys have an offer for a physical volunteer, so we'll definitely make sure everybody gets connected, reacquainted, reconnected, and a little stoned, and then we'll all get out there and help a little bit. Yeah, their cannabis is, well, not them specifically, but they're associated to some growers that have phenomenal cannabis, and the work they're doing is absolutely, it's mind-blowing. I'm glad there's folks like them out there, because, we need them.
Absolutely. And I mean, I love how sort of selfless they're being in it. You know, they're just heading out into the community and looking for opportunities to help people in need. I love that. I think that's great, and I want to support them.
Nice. So happening in Vancouver on Tuesday is COVA, and they're hosting an all-day seminar to learn everything about opening a cannabis retail store in British Columbia. Cova is a compliant cannabis retail software suite, and they simplify cannabis retail store operations so retailers can focus on growing a profitable business. And I think this is a great event that they're hosting. So if you're considering working in cannabis retail and having your own business, go to Cova, and that's COVA, to learn more about how you can join this all-day seminar.
Awesome. What else? Do you want to do your shameless plugs at this point?
Yeah, I think it's shameless plug time.
I think it might be. It's well, I guess yes. Sorry, I should probably be doing my events as well. I don't really have too much coming up here, but I am looking forward, obviously, to the Sessions podcast from the Herb Life. Thank you for plugging that one, because I think that's an awesome idea. I really like the idea of those roving hosts. So I think we might have to chat afterwards for more collaborations at some point. Again, you're on iTunes, Google Play, you're on everywhere. So awesome. Good. Yeah, well, I don't think we're on SoundCloud either.
No.
So, all right, shameless plug time. Unity, you're up. We're going to start really wrapping her up now.
Okay,
The ball's
I'm gonna
rolling.
Go first this week. So I am the co-founder and creative director. I'm also one half of Cobb and Unity. So thank you very much, Cobb, for this. And Bliss Cloud is normalizing consumption with higher understanding of modern cannabis. We're doing small, intimate groups with new consumers to discuss legal cannabis. And our next one is on March 17th. So go to blisscloud.com to sign up. You can also find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, at Unity Marguerite.
Awesome, Unity. Thank you very much. I'll do my quick shameless plugs as well. I hail from Instagram at Matchstick Marijuana. I've now moved to YouTube, and I need new business cards because I anticipated my name incorrectly. So it's I'm at Matchstick. Excuse me. I guess not at Matchstick Marijuana, but I'm just Matchstick Marijuana, all one word now, because as of this past week, I hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. Woot 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 woot. Beyond that, I'm at Matchstick Fire on Twitter, but there's not a lot of action going on there. I am on Facebook as well, but again, I'm still confused by that platform. It's been probably a decade since I actively used it, and right now I just see a lot of memes being thrown around. So we're going to figure that one out, team. In relation to the podcast as well, if there are any micro growers, micro cultivators, those that are looking for processing or sales licenses from the micro cultivation side, I do have a decent network, and I have referred some of your colleagues and peers to some consulting firms in the country that have been able to help them out immensely. They went from basically having exceptional fears to getting into the regulated system and feeling that they're not going to be able to thanking me saying, dear God, this is the first time we've had a little bit of hope mixed in with our operations. So if you guys do have questions or whatnot, I don't know that I can specifically answer them, but I can definitely give you guys some options as to who you can touch base with to find that support. Beyond that, I just want to thank Unity as well for keeping me on my game here anyways. I definitely want to thank Liam Couture. He did a bang-up job basically saving our asses today because we had some tech issues, serious tech issues, which involved mostly forgetfulness and not tech issues. So Liam, thank you very much. Andrea, Jeremy, thank you guys so much for letting us use the space back here. Hi, Terry, how are you? Now we got a couple of dogs here too that we got to thank. So Lego and Link.
Twinning.
Beyond that, thanks to you guys for tuning in again. We really appreciate the support. I honestly can't thank you enough for joining us, Jill. This was a wonderful afternoon and a really nice denouement to the exciting setup that we had. The adrenaline was pumping pretty hard. So I'm going to go change my shirt. I'm a little sweaty. How about you, Unity?
I've got my brand new shirt on. Call me your highness.
I think I should get one of those too. In an age of gender equality, I want to wear one of those as well. And I honestly, those sleeves will just, my guns will just pop. They'll pop. So yeah. Jill, thank you very much for joining us. And I look forward to following up with you on sessions at some point.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Good work, guys. I think we did it. We'll just leave that in the middle there and let her ride.
Oh, mine wasn't even showing. We failed our twinning moment.